You first fight Erlang Shen as part of a game's introduction, but you also get an opportunity to fight him for real, at least provided you do a whole bunch of quests and go through most of the game. And this is something that is very worth doing, because you need to beat this secret or hidden boss to get the perks for your 6th relic, Freed Mind, which you get after beating the game and entering New Game Plus. Now, Erlang himself is a challenging foe, made even more difficult by his shield mechanic, where basically he protects himself from a portion of the damage and gets the ability to do fun things like dodge your heavy attacks. But much like Yellow Long, this is largely a fight of attrition. His patterns aren't overly complex, he is simply a relentless attacker, so you need to counter his aggression with your own. And after you do, you take on the 4 Heavenly Kings, plus Erlang Shen himself, but this time in heaven. Luckily at that point you're the Stone Monkey, so the battle's much more about cinematics than challenge. So in today's video, I'm going to be going over how to do the quest, where to find Erlang Shen, and how to beat him. Basically everything you need to know to get the secret ending in Black Myth Wukong. But if you're just here for the tips and tricks on beating the boss, or just here to see how the fight went for me, feel free to use the chapters to jump around in the video. But for now, let's start at the beginning. Everything you need to do to unlock access to the battle to begin with. You need to do something in every chapter. In chapter 1, ring the 3 bells and beat Elder Jinshi. You need to do this to get the fireproof mental vessel anyway, so there's a good chance you've already done it. In chapter 2, complete the Yellow-Robed Squire's quest and beat Fuban. Again, I think there's a good chance you've done it, because that's how you get the Wind Tamer, which makes the Yellow Wind Sage much easier. In chapter 3, follow the treasure hunter and complete his quest. This rewards Spellbinder. Chapter 4, beat the Venom Taoist, enter Purple Cloud Mountain, beat the Duskvale, and yes, this is how you get the Weaver's Needle, so I think a lot of people will have done the chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4 requirements already. In chapter 5, you have to follow the Pale Axe Stalwart's quest and beat Bishui, Golden-Eyed Beast. This one doesn't have any cool unlocks, so maybe some people skipped it. Luckily, as far as I know, there isn't a lockout condition here, so even if you finish chapter 5, you can go back and do it. And finally, in chapter 6, you need to assemble the Heavens Equal armor set. First, you get the 4 pieces by beating the Fangtail General, Emerald Arm Mantis, Cloud Trading Deer, and Gold Armored Rhino. Then you claim Wukong's weapon, the Jingu Bang, in Water Curtain Cave. After you do this, you can head to the Great Pagoda, which requires a bit of backtracking since it's located in chapter 3. Start from the Snow-Veiled Trail Shrine, turn right across the bridge, travel all the way down the path. It's very long, but quite linear, so you can't get lost. Then, in that Great Pagoda, if you've done everything correctly, you should see 5 murals and a small monk by a blank wall. Approach the monk, speak to him, you enter Mount Mei, and that's where you challenge Erlang. Now, when it comes to the fight, builds, talents, etc., I've now done it 3 times with 3 very different builds, one of which was Spellbinder, so I couldn't use any vessels, no flashy stuff. But the most important thing about the fight is how you deal with the shield mechanic. Hitting rapidly is more important than hitting hard. So there's a few things that can help with this. Number 1, max out Staff Spin. Staff Spin strikes rapidly, and it's a good way to build focus while you're burning down his shield. Number 2, the Spirit Ba Ba Lang Lang. You get this by beating all of the frog bosses, then using the tadpoles to upgrade the frog that you got in chapter 1. If you don't have this, Earthwolf is a good alternative. This increases your focus gen and hits multiple times, staggering the boss as it does. Number 3, use the Plantain Fan, the vessel that you got for completing chapter 5. Not only does this very effectively melt through his shield, in fact it's one of the most effective ways to break it, but it also staggers him for the entire duration, allowing you to get in even more free damage either on his shield or on the boss himself. Depending on how much damage you have, this can literally skip an entire portion of a fight. And lastly, pay a little attention to your spells, because Immobilize isn't going to be very effective here, so I would actually recommend swapping it out. You'll get about 1 good use out of it throughout the entire fight. After that, you should not use it a second time. So instead, I found that Ring of Fire was just a better pick, especially with a perk that allows Ring of Fire to charge you up to 4 focus points. With that said, if you use Ring of Fire around the boss, he will draw the fire into his weapon, giving him fire attacks, but you also get a lot of free healing and a lot of focus from the spell, so overall I'd call it a net positive. Oh, and last up, it is very effective to use a Pluck of Many to burst the boss down and basically skip the end portion of a fight. So not only should you use that, but you should also save mana for it, because if you use all your mana in the early portions, you're not going to have any towards the end, even if you're using something like a mana recovery drink. Which, speaking of, in terms of your gourd, I'd actually set things up to maximize for healing. This is a relatively long fight. The boss does a lot of damage, and so on my first attempts, I found that usually what caused me to die was simply running out of flask charges. Now in terms of stances, personally I like thrust. That said, you can definitely use pillar and you can definitely use smash, so pick your weapon according to your favorite stance. In terms of armor, I strongly recommend having the Gilded Radiant set. This is the one where after dealing a crit, you get a little bit of ki back. This means more spirits and, more importantly, more vessels, which you can use to burn down his shield. You use this set to ensure that you can use the Plantain Fan twice, effectively trivializing 2 of the times where he shields himself. So, with all of that said, let's get into his moveset. First up, his basic attacks are long and intricate, but be especially careful to avoid his finisher when he's using a thrust attack, because that finisher ends in a grab, and if you fail to dodge it, you're going to take quite a bit of damage. Also, I would recommend dodging left and right around the boss, as, well, number 1, he runs away from you plenty and you don't really have ranged attacks to reach him, and number 2, especially if you're using staff spin, it's very close range, so you always want to be close to capitalize on the windows in between his attacks. One thing to keep in mind though, and like I mentioned before, he changes his weapon based on your actions. By default, he uses a thunder weapon, but if you hit him with poison, now he's going to draw that into his weapon, use poison attacks. If you use fire, he's going to draw that into his weapon, use fire attacks. Do be a little careful, watch out for these things. Overall though, I don't think it makes the fight that much more dangerous to use them. Certainly, it doesn't make the fight dangerous enough to outweigh the benefits of dropping something like a Ring of Fire. Now, something else to watch out for is clashing with a boss. As you attack him while he is shielded, eventually you get this kind of cinematic cutscene where he and the Destined One clash. This isn't really harmful, it doesn't do damage, but it can very much interrupt your flow, especially if you're trying to combo him and get off a finisher. One thing to keep an eye out for though. When he jumps into the air, spins his weapon around, note the spin can deal damage, though it's relatively short range, the lightning will turn red, and then he crashes down doing massive damage. Whatever you do, try your best to avoid the finisher. Luckily, this is one point where he's pretty weak, so if you dodge the finisher and you end up close to him, start staff spinning, do damage to that shield. Also, I know throughout this, it can look really tempting to just unleash a heavy attack, because after all, heavy attacks hit hard and you need to do damage. The problem is, while his shield is active, there's a very good chance that he simply dodges it, negating all the damage. But if you hit him in the moment where his shield breaks and he staggers back, that is the perfect opportunity to get in some damage, and doing it that way, he never evaded the heavy. Something else to watch out for is his I-beam move, where he basically sweeps the arena with eye lasers. It isn't super damaging, but this is a fight of attrition, and it's quite long. So, chip damage matters, and you should do your best to avoid it over time. The easiest way to avoid this, if you're close enough to the boss, is simply get behind the boss. Also, remember earlier how I said he mirrors your spells? Well, sometimes when you use a transformation, he will also use a transformation, which is kind of annoying because it temporarily renders him immune to damage. Though luckily he doesn't seem to do too much damage in this form, so I guess there's at least a little bit of a win there. But with a lot of his more basic moves out of the way, the number one thing that you have to think about and manage throughout the entire fight is his shield and the transitions tied to his shield. So, his shield prevents some of the damage he takes. If you don't damage him for a while, it will start to slowly regenerate over time, so you very much should keep the pressure on. And in addition, at 75, 50, and 10% health, he gets the full shield back. At 75 and 50, he does a transition. So, transition number 1 happens at 75% health, where he summons a giant axe in the sky that crashes down. It's very easy to dodge, but from now on he uses an axe attack as part of his combos. And the axe attack generates a shockwave. So, the axe is particularly effective when it comes to punishing you for dodging away, which means, again, you need to time your dodge, and if at all possible, dodge through the shockwave to approach the boss and get in damage. Then, at 50% health, he does his I-beam storm, where he summons a bunch of copies of himself, or maybe just teleports through the air rapidly, and fires eye lasers. I found the best way to deal with this is run to the edge of the arena and get under the boss, because he isn't ever going to shoot straight down. The sweeping beams cover a wide range, they move kind of randomly, they're a pain to dodge. Then, right after the eye beam, he starts using his sword channeling move. And yes, he will continue, much like with the axe move, to use this sword channeling move throughout the rest of the fight. He rapidly fires swords at you. You can either decoy them with something like Cloud Step, or you can deflect them with Staff Spin. But then you need to dodge the final strike where he crashes down. The cue for this is the red lightning appears again, and it does massive damage, so really do your best to avoid it, as you're going to have to drink if you get hit. Also, from now on, he frequently weaves his sword into his basic attack combos, which I personally found to be a little bit harder to avoid than the regular spear combos that don't use the sword. Now, at around 10% health, he shields himself one last time. This doesn't have a special transition where he flies up into the air and summons a new weapon or anything like that, but even the extra health in this phase is still super dangerous, because remember, he is still using his axe moves, he is still using his sword channeling moves, and he's still using everything that he had throughout the rest of the fight. So, my recommendation here is use a Pluck of Many, use any other mana that you have, use your Vessel, use your Spirit, use your Transformation, use everything that you still have available, burn his health down as much as possible while trying to protect your health. Because once you get through that shield, honestly, he's going to go down pretty darn quickly, and depending on how much focus you have, how much damage you have, he may even die in the stagger once the shield breaks. So, with all of that said, here's the first time that I beat Erlang the Sacred Divinity. I didn't play perfectly, but I played just well enough to get through the fight.
Predator starting. Behind the vein. This. Power off. Yin and yang. Much closer. Don't fade just yet. The world is cruel. Destiny unfair. Do have some of his spark. That's it. I won't hold back from now. Let's fight! My skin and lightning my heart. Again. Erlang! Unleash your might! Ready to start over. You can't evade this! Your destiny. Peace.
Alright, so after you beat Erlang, you take the battle to heaven, you fight the 4 heavenly kings, followed by Erlang Shen himself in his heavenly form. But you are now the Stone Monkey. You gain a couple of fun new powers. The first of which is, you basically full heal if you do a 4 focus heavy attack. So, being aggressive, even if it means taking a bit of damage, and really charging up those heavy attacks is absolutely the way to go here. As long as your health doesn't reach 0, you'll basically be able to do the big old smash, heal yourself up to full. Second of all, you have Rock Solid, and it has a very short cooldown. Plus, in stone form, you don't spend mana. Spam this whenever it's up and someone is likely to attack you. Use the focus on those charged heavy attacks. Also, throughout the course of a fight, you gain the ability to empower your attacks with first Ice, then Fire to deal more damage. And again, if your health gets really, really low, dodge, use your charged heavy. Doesn't have to be at 4 focus. 4 focus is certainly better, but using it at any focus at all to get your health up, get yourself stable, totally fine to do. Also, it's important to note, if you do fail in this fight, don't worry, you don't have to redo the first fight against Erlang in his Sacred Divinity form. You'll just have to redo this fight. Personally, I found the 4 Heavenly Kings to be really, really easy. Again, it felt 100% cinematic. Erlang himself, a little bit more difficult because he does a significant amount of damage. But as long as I'm deflecting with Stone Form on cooldown, and as long as I'm using charged heavy attacks liberally, I never really felt like I was going to die. I just felt like my health was getting low. Now, last up, I do have a fun little tip for New Game Plus. Since, like I said at the top, you need to do this 3 times if you want to unlock all the perks on the Freed Mind Relic. When you win this fight, you get Erlang's Spear. And this is the mythic version of the Thrust Stance weapon. So when you use your Thrust Stance varied combo with weapon equipped, you summon a Storm of Swords, which, yes, is a multi-hit attack and is highly effective against breaking his shield. So on my second playthrough, I did Spellbinder. That means no vessels, no spirits, no summoning monkey army, none of that tricky stuff. I decided to play it straight, not even cheese it. Technically, at the start of a fight, you can pop your vessel, you can pop your spirit, then you can go Spellbinder. Technically, you can even pop spells and then get your mana back via a mana drink and then pop Spellbinder. But no. I didn't do any of that. Just straight up Spellbinder before the fight starts. Never use anything except for my martial arts. And let me tell you, the varied combo absolutely carried me through the Erlang fight on New Game Plus. So with all of that said, good luck beating Erlang the Sacred Divinity, and enjoy the cutscene once you get the final ending. If you want some tips on how to beat the Great Sage's Broken Shell, well, do be sure to get subscribed, leave a like while you're down there, because at least if you're watching this when it's airing, I'm going to be making that video shortly. If not, check the card, check the description, I may have it down below. With that said, I really like the fight against Erlang the Sacred Divinity. In fact, it's my favorite fight in the entire game. When I look for Souls-like bosses, I want a singular challenging opponent. I don't want random ads everywhere. I don't want giant hitboxes where it feels like I'm fighting the camera rather than the boss. And to be honest with you, I find I usually favor the things that are simpler martial arts combat, rather than the flashier enemies that use a lot of spells. Though there are some exceptions there. R'Lana, for example, from Elden Ring, absolutely brilliant fight. But suffice to say, the Sacred Divinity was everything that I wanted in a challenging boss encounter. And it was even cooler to fight him the second time in New Game Plus and win with relative ease because I was much stronger, I'd prepared well, and the difficulty jump from your first playthrough to New Game Plus isn't all that severe. So I found it a really nice victory lap to go through the game again. With that said, good luck on your own fight against Erlang. Thanks for watching to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.